So this part is going to be a lot of tweaking. And again, this is the third time I built this. So if it feels like it's really, really easy for me to do, that's just because I've already went through the experimentation process. So basically what we want to do here is about mid-frame through, maybe like we'll do frame 130. I'm going to go ahead and give myself some more room and get rid of those modifiers over there. We'll go ahead and move this down a little bit. So it's going to be down a little bit over here and right there. So a little bit out of frame like this. And then we'll just go ahead and do I rotation, I location. And then what we'll do is we'll go back to frame 100 or 101 and we'll go ahead and move this back up out of frame. So we want to go to the opposite side right there. So it's going to be right over here. And we want this rotation to be something like this. So if this jet is kind of flying in here, I'm going to do I location and I rotation. I'm going to go ahead and set my orientation to be local so I can essentially control this a little bit better. So it's going to be essentially coming, if it's stopping right here, we want the bottom to be essentially a 90-degree angle from the direction that it's going, right? And you can see here we got a couple different problems. I'm going to go ahead and hit home to frame my keyframes. And, you know, it's kind of not looking very believable, right? So the point where it kind of comes to a stop, essentially we want that to be essentially mid-rotation. And then when it comes back to kind of like leveling up, we want then to kind of level up, right? So from here, we want this to be, we're going to go into our rotation here. The most important one is going to be Y. I'm going to go ahead and turn off all the X rotation. We'll just focus on the Y rotation now. So this is the part where we can kind of really, really start to tweak. So I'm going to give myself some more room and kind of just play this back a couple different times. And again, if you're having playback issues, you might want to switch to viewport shading. If you're on a lower end graphics card, this will be giving you faster feedback for sure. I'm going to stay in rendered mode. So from here, what we want to do is essentially have this not really be done in terms of rotation and have it level back out. So we're going to go ahead and move this up a bit, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to move this, and I'm going to go ahead and snap in Y to stay on that keyframe. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're essentially just going to exaggerate this. So I'm going to play around with this a bit. It'll be a lot of tweaking to get there, but if I do something like this, where I kind of have it kind of come in, and then it can kind of do its thing where it comes in, kind of hits the point, and then kind of comes back up. Something like that. We'll see how that looks. Very good. So it's like this. And then essentially we want it to be kind of starting to level out whenever it hits that bottom point. And the bottom point is going to be on the frame 131. So what we want to do is essentially move this over so it starts to level out as it stops, right? So we'll go ahead and play with that a bit. Not too bad. We'll go ahead and play around with this. We can kind of exaggerate how much turn it's already in. And since we're kind of peaking it right here, we'll kind of exaggerate that a little bit. Very good. So the key things right here is that it's just coming in hot, and then it kind of right where our bottom out is, we want that keyframe to be leveling up like this. And then we want that linear output as well. So it's going to be kind of leveling out. So we'll go ahead, we'll start tweaking our location as well. So same kind of thing here. We want this to be coming in hot. So we'll go ahead and rotate these down right here so that it's already coming in pretty fast. Right. And then same thing coming outwards. So we want this, we don't want this just to kind of level out. We want to kind of have some negotiation that's happening there. So we'll go ahead and grab blue. If you have trouble like selecting these, it's always a good idea to kind of like just isolate what you want to work on and do something like this, where you can just view that. This is a little too much right now, so I'll kind of like dial that back a little bit. And again, it's going to be a lot of like little tweaks, but that's okay. It's good to kind of see this tweaking stuff happening. Looking good. So I think right now, the animation of it kind of settling in terms of rotation is a little bit too much. So I'll go ahead and kind of tweak this a little bit more. So this part is just a little too exaggerated. It comes to a stop a little bit too much. So we'll just kind of like smoothen that out a little bit. So it's not so aggressive. Good. And then I think from here, what we can do is simply the location still is a little bit too much. So we need to have a little bit of in the Z specifically coming down. We need to have a little bit more of a slow moving up. So I'm going to exaggerate this out a little bit. So it's going to come to a slower stop essentially. So I'm essentially pulling these curves out until they cause it to come in faster, but slow down a little bit slower. And then from here, I think the X location, it's kind of doing this weird thing where it kind of goes back over horizontally, and it's not very believable. So I'm just going to tweak that a bit. So I'll go ahead and kind of like level this out, maybe not go over so much. So I'll just pull this up a little bit so it doesn't go over so much. That way it doesn't need to actually go back to the center of the frame. And that's looking pretty decent. I think there's a little bit of a weird thing right at the end where it kind of does a little bit of a shift in motion. So I'll just go ahead and kind of like level that out. And then I think our Y is still flat. So then we'll go to the Z right there. And we'll just kind of like level this out like that. And then from here, we just want to have it come in the frame a little bit faster. And to be able to do that, we'll just kind of do this kind of stuff where we come in with this a little bit, and then what we can do is pull this out. So essentially it's going to be coming in the frame faster because it's going to be reaching this faster. Not too bad. And then what I always do is I look at from the camera, and I always look at from the 3D view as well, because if it's looking weird in the 3D view, a lot of errors can kind of show up there. And that's looking pretty good. I think probably from here, what we can do is it's still, I think it's the rotation is just a little too much. So essentially what I'm looking at here is this position, the location where it's going like this. We want this jet to be 90 degrees to that because that's essentially its brakes, right? So from here, what we can do is simply just go into our Y rotation and just bring this down a little bit so it's not so exaggerated. Something like this. Cool. And then just one thing really quick, our light is currently in our way. So I'm going to go ahead and move that. I'm going to go into my global settings here and then simply just move this out like here. And we'll just move that up, and I'm just going to turn this into a sunlight, and we'll switch this down to a strength of 1, and we'll just kind of rotate this over into the world. Maybe we'll do like a strength of 2 or something like that. Maybe 3. Great. And then after playing this back a couple times, what I'm going to do is I think the nose is just kind of getting cut off a little bit too much, a little bit too long. So I'm going to essentially limit how far this can go down in location Y, or Z rather. So I'll just go ahead and view this. So I'm going into my Z location here, and then we'll simply move this up right here. And as I'm moving, I'm just going to use Y to snap to kind of bring that up a little bit. And then we'll play around with this a little bit. Right, and I think I'm going to leave it off right somewhere right there. So this last little arc there, what I did was I just kind of comes in and kind of comes out like this. So it kind of wobbles a little bit, so it feels a little bit more aggressive. So again, a lot of tweaking there. The best thing to do, I think, is just experiment. If you feel like you're experimenting a lot, that's exactly what you should be doing. I'm going to screen capture these last graphs that we have here. So this is X and Z. So this is what our final graph for our position is doing. Something like this. Look at Z by itself there, it's right there, and then we'll look at X by itself, something like that. And then we'll look at the Y rotation, which is the only other thing that's rotating. So again, it's, 9 keyframes total. That's it. And it's really just a matter of a lot of tweaking, a lot of experimentation. So from here, we'll just render this out. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to my output settings. We'll go / render. Then we'll do shot A, and then we'll do version 1, shot A version 1, and then we'll do JPEG sequence. And then from here, you can simply, I'm going to make sure motion blur is on, and then we can just simply do a render animation here, or we can render with the Eevee add-on. There we go. Our frames are all finished up, and then we'll just do render and then view animation. Go ahead and view what this looks like. Not too bad. So we'll get started in the next shot in the next chapter.